It was the vacation of a lifetime. Just my best friend Nicole and I going away to Ireland. I was very excited as we were going to stay in a famous castle, which of course had some history of its own. I believe it was Capra Castle, of something to that effect. I recalled as it was yesterday. We were in rooms number 71. We left our room to go through the courtyard to the main castle for dinner. We then proceeded to go look for this haunted bridge or something. We made a few jokes about how we were going to hang each other from the bridge. We had a bit of fun with that, hit the bar, and then went back towards our room. After returning, our luggage was messed up on the floor. We thought nothing of it. Could it have been the maid for all we know? I'm not sure. But we noticed that the dog that went around the hotel courtyard was outside of our room. Was an Irish wolfhound. So we got to bed about an hour or so after we had got back, and we locked the door, and the dog got up and went away. So it was now about 1 a.m. I was sleeping through the night, and around 3 a.m., I had a rude awakening. I started freaking out because I felt like someone was on top of me, and that I was being scratched at. I was freaking out, and I started screaming and moving around, and I was hitting Nicole, trying to wake her up. I felt that my face was bleeding and could taste the blood. I was in a state of panic. I managed to get Nicole up, and she was trying to calm me down. I was telling her I was bleeding and to get help right away. As she felt my face, she felt the blood. She was in shock. So she said she would turn on the light and call the desk for help. She reached for the phone and light, which were right by one another, and she got, as she described, brutally pushed aside, hitting her head on the floor. She reached for her pocket keychain light to search for the light. She crawled over to the light switch and came running back to the bed, where I was still feeling as if I was pinned down. She got on the bed to check on me, and I felt as if I could freely move up. So I sit up. I was feeling pinned down this whole time, hence my freaking out. She checked me for blood, and there was no sign of blood. We went to open the door and checked to see if there was any sign of forced entry into our hotel room in case it was something else. There we saw the dog walk back to the front of our door, and he laid down there. We couldn't get back to sleep after all of that. The whole thing freaked me out, and I'm not sure why exactly that did happen. Why was the dog back after the attack? Why could I taste blood and then be fine? I couldn't move, and I did not shove Nicole off the bed. It was one of the most freaky experiences ever. Did I anger a spirit and they were being spiteful? This isn't my first encounter with strange beings, just the more physical. Woodsford Castle. I've had a few weird experiences, but this is by far the scariest. Me, my sister, my parents, and my grandparents all went and stayed in a natural trust place called Woodsford Castle. It was really old-fashioned with the decapitated stags and stuff mounted on the wall along with chandeliers. In the visitor's book, there was loads of questions about whether the castle was haunted or not. The room me and my sister stayed in was the oldest room in the castle. It was always quite dark and cold in the room, even if we had the lights on, and you always got a chilled, prickly feeling when you were in there alone. Whenever I went into the room, I felt a huge urge to leave and felt like someone was trying to make me get out. One night, I went to the toilet, and as I was coming back up the stairs, I heard footsteps clicking up the steps, which sounded like high-heeled boots. This confused me a bit, but I passed it off as my imagination and walked back to the room me and my sister were staying in. When I opened the door, I saw someone standing over my sister. It wasn't any of my family because they all denied being awake at that time. I couldn't see what she looked like because she was mainly a shadow, but all I could really see was what looked like a long dress, suggesting she was a woman. As I walked into the room, there was a sudden chill, and the woman vanished. I told my mom, who is a real believer of spirits, and she said that the woman may have wanted me out of the room so she could be with my sister alone. But we don't know why she wanted my sister. We were all really scared and left a day early because we didn't feel safe. If anyone has any idea why this woman wanted my sister alone, it would be really helpful to know. Castle Leslie haunting. So I just got home from a 2-night stay at Castle Leslie in Co. Monaghan. I was aware that there was reported hauntings prior to going out, but did not want to read any stories before I went, and my wife was totally unaware of any stories relating to the castle. We stayed in Norman's room, and a series of events happened between 1 a.m. and first light, which would have been around 5 or 6 a.m.-ish. The night is in question was Monday night, Tuesday morning, the 4th and 5th of April, 2016. Firstly, we returned to the room around 12 a.m., and we both were very tired after the drive up from Woodsford. I was awoken, and I could feel a presence in the room, and I could make out the figure of a man sitting in the chair next to the bed. The hair was standing on the back of my neck, and I couldn't move. I then saw what I can only describe as a mist cloud over the right-hand side of the bed. I had a restless night of dreams. One of those was a dream of being in the bed, and others which I can't recall. It was very warm in the room, and I was too scared to move or even hang my leg outside the covers. In the morning, my wife confirmed she too had a night of vivid dreams and awoke to see a cloud of mist at the foot of my bed. No windows in the room were open. I was glad to see the morning and went to the bathroom. Our room overlooked the vast gardens and lake, and whilst looking out over the lake, it looked like a wave or wall of water around 10 feet was moving across very slowly. My wife confirmed the same, but by the time I got my camera to take the picture, it had disappeared. The following night, we told the night porter our experience, and he mentioned that there were reports of the bed being haunted and offered to move us into another room. Nothing like this has happened before, and I would say I was open-minded, yet very skeptical. We had a sound sleep on Tuesday night with the help of a different set of spirits. I can't explain what we saw, and we will return there one day, but won't be staying in Norman's room. An audible manifestation. My only ghostly experience came in the fall of 1986. I had lost most of my vision from diabetes and had entered a residential rehabilitation facility in the capital city of a southern state. Rumors had been shared among clients about odd things that occurred on the campus that encompassed an entire city block. Because many clients came to the rehabilitation facility with secondary medical complications, there had been cases of clients passing on in their dormitory rooms. Odd things had been reported, such as the elevator engaging and moving from one floor to the other, when only one person, the business officer manager, sat in his office in the administration building. More than once, he had charged out of his office into the elevator doors to see who was coming from the second floor, but the elevator was always empty when the doors slid open. That to me could be easily explained as an electrical glitch versus something paranormal. But that same office manager was in the small first floor reception area of the training hall with two men who were hired as security guards during the week-long Christmas closure. One of the guards was a regular member of maintenance, and the other a part-time staff member, and both fully knowledgeable about the entire campus. The clients and all staff had departed except for these three men. They stood quietly, chatting when they all heard a sound, It sounded like someone had dragged a heavy pile of furniture across the floor directly over their heads. They rushed to the second floor, but nothing was moved or out of place. This they could not explain. My experience took place in the hall, where my room, along with 3 other rooms, were located. There was a fire stairway at one end of the short hall that led either upstairs to the women's second floor dorm rooms or outdoors and into the courtyard. Double swinging doors on the other end of that hall opened into the first floor women's lounge and then either led out the courtyard or through a second set of swinging doors that led to the counseling hall. It was a Friday night and I had just finished supper. Using my white crane, I made my way out of the cafeteria, into the training hall's reception area, and down through the hall, up the short set of stairs, and through the counseling hall. I passed through the first set of swinging doors and walked across the first floor of women's lounge and through the second set of doors and into my hall. My room was the first door on the left. The hall was very short and you needed to take only one step to cross the hall to the door directly across from mine. I removed my door key and using my left hand located the keyhole and just begun to insert the key with my right hand when I heard 5 taps on the door across the hall from my own. It sounded like someone tapped with just one finger. I straightened my position and spun on my heels, feeling somewhat foolish for not having realized that there was someone in the hall with me. I said a pleasant hello, but received no answer. I could only imagine the look on my face when no response came. Finally, in shrugging my shoulders, I turned my back to my own door. As I was again about to insert my key into the slot, a thought struck me. Knowing that it was a habit for all diabetics to be housed on the first floor in the event of needing assistance quickly for a low blood sugar, I again turned to the door across from mine. My thought was that perhaps one of the 2 ladies sharing the room had knocked from the inside and was in need of help. I took the one step necessary to reach their door. In a loose fist, I raised my hand to knock on their door, but before I could, I again heard the 5 taps on the door, but this time there was no question that those taps came from my side of their door and that I was the only person standing in the hall. Then I heard one of the ladies in that room say, "Yes, someone is at the door. See who it is." Well, when they opened the door, there I was standing transfixed with my right hand still in the air as if to knock. When they asked what I might need, it took me a moment until I found my voice. I knew what just had happened and was trying to process what I knew had just happened, but was finding it difficult to admit that I knew in my heart what I knew, that someone or something had tapped on the door right beside me. I finally was able to explain what I had heard from inside the hall, the 2 sets of 5 taps on the door. They both said they heard the taps too. We stood there puzzled when I burst out laughing. I was still not ready to face the reality of what I had known I had heard. I said, "Oh, I know. Your guard dog was leaning against the door and scratched, which caused the tapping sounds." "But," one lady said, "neither of us have a guide dog." She replicated the tapping sound exactly as we all heard it. I know those tappings came from the hall side of their door. The sound was not a foot to my right and at eye level as I stood there. Had it been a real person, we would have been all but touching shoulders. Together, we 3 ladies attempted to replicate the sound by going through the swinging doors, opening and closing the stairwell door, and even the doors leading out into the courtyard from the women's lounge. We could not replicate those tappings, no matter what we tried, and despite not having vision, I slept that night with all my room's lights on. The following Monday, as I walked to the administration building, I caught up with the director of vocational training. I asked her if, to her knowledge, anyone had ever passed on that floor. She said that yes, years before, an older woman who once occupied one of the rooms on the far right side of the women's lounge had gone to lay down after a double period of orientation and mobility, instruction for using a white cane, and had expired in her sleep. When I explained what we three ladies had experienced that Friday night, she made me vow that I would never share the story with other clients so as not to frighten them. I know what I heard. I know what we three ladies heard. I have no rational explanation except to speculate that the former, and now departed, client was visiting one of her fellow dormies in my hall.